Section 4.2, Rounding Decimals. Now what is critical in this section to understand is the idea of place values. So if you're not comfortable with place values, please review the video in section 4.1. Now here's an example where they want us to round to the nearest tenth. Okay, so when they want you to round to a place value, you must first identify the number in the place value. So in this case, the 6 is in the tenths location. Now one of two things are going to happen. Either that's going to remain a 6 or become a 7. That's the only two possibilities. Well, how do we decide what to do? We're going to round this number from 6 to 7. We're going to round it up, in other words, by 1. If the number to the right, and by to the right we mean to the right of the place value where we are rounding to, is 5 or higher. So in this case we now look at this value right here, which is the first place to the right of the place value we are rounding to, and see that it's a 7. 7 is obviously 5 or higher, and so we are going to increase this value by 1. And so round it to the nearest tenth would be 354 and 7 tenths. 6 plus 1 is 7. Now the other possibility is, instead of rounding this up, we're going to leave the number as is. And we do that if the number to the right of the place value we are rounding to is 4 or less. So let's look at an example of that. So here they want us to round to the nearest 10. Okay, so let's locate the place value there. It's kind of getting a little messy here, but I'll underline it. The 5 is in the tens place value. So one of two things: that stays 5 or becomes a 6. We look to the right, we see a 4. Since it's 4 or less, we're going to leave this number alone. And when we write the number, we take it all the way to the place value we are rounding to, in this case a 5. And if we are to the left of the decimal, we have to continue to write zeros until we reach the decimal point. So in this case we have to put an additional 0 for the place value here, and we are finished. We do not, and I repeat, we do not want to write a decimal point with anything after it. To the left of the decimal, once you've rounded to the place value, take zeros all the way to the implied decimal point. Round to the nearest hundredth. Step 1, identify the place value you are rounding to. It's 7. We then look at the place to the right. If it's 5 or higher, we round up by 1, so we're going to add 1. And when we write the answer, it will be 354 and 68. And then after the decimal point, we do not write anything beyond the place value we are rounding to. So these are ignored. So here's the answer rounded to the nearest hundredth. If we want to round it to the nearest thousandth, same process. In this case, the 5 is in the thousandth place. We look to the right and we see the 4. Since it's 4 or less, we leave that alone. And when we write the answer, 354 and 6, 7, 5, nothing changed, but we do not write anything after the place value we're rounding to when it's to the right of a decimal point. Many problems will involve money, so there's two key concepts to understand. When they say round to the nearest dollar, well, what do they mean? Well, our money system, the nearest dollar would be the ones. We're talking about the closest $1. So in this case, the 4 is in the ones place, or the dollar place. And as always, we take a look. The only thing that can happen is it's going to stay 4 or become a 5. We look to the right, we can go beyond the decimal point. We see that a 6 is to the right, which means we're going to add 1. And so our value will be 355. And since we've reached the decimal point, we do not write anything after the decimal. It will mark it wrong. If you were to write 355 and you put 2 zeros after, even though we know that these are equivalent answers, whenever you round, you stop at the decimal point if what you're rounding to is to the left of the decimal. Round to the nearest dollar. The 9 is in the dollars location. The 5 is the first digit to the right. It's 5 or higher, so we will add 1. 9 plus 1 is 10. I'll write the 0. I have to carry the 1. 9 plus 1 is 10. I write the 0, carry the 1. 3 plus 1 is 4. Since what I am rounding is to the left of the decimal, I have to go all the way to the decimal, which I did. I do not write anything after the decimal, so the answer would be 400. If we are asked to round to the nearest cent, okay, cent, Latin word for 100, centuries, 1 cent we know is 1/100th of a dollar. So when they talk about the nearest cent, they're talking in our money system to the nearest hundredth. So the 2 is in the hundredths position. So as always, we look if there is a digit to the right, which is in this case there is, it's a 5. 5 or higher, we round up. So 399 and 53 100ths, because we added the 1 to the 2. One more to the nearest cent. The 9 is in the cent location. To the right is an 8, which means we're going to add 1. 9 plus 1 is 10. Carry the 1. 9 plus 1 is 10. Carry the 1. We'll bring our decimal point down. There's our carry. 7 plus 1 is 8. So rounded to the nearest cent would be $8. Here's an example of a word problem from this section. If you're paying 67 cents for 2 cans of corn, then they tell you that 1 can would cost this much, and they have already done the math for you. 67 cents divided by 2 is going to be this value right here. Well, our money system, since we have to, it's assumed that we're rounding to the nearest penny, our money system only goes to 2 decimal places. So if we're going to round this number to the nearest cent, the 3 is in the cent location. We look to the right, see a 5, 5 or higher, we round up. So we add 1, so the amount that we would pay at the register would be 34 cents.